Welcome back, everybody, to We Are TPM with myself, Kyle Teixeira. Again, sitting across from me is John Teixeira.
Hello.
And this week we have Joel Verinder with us to discuss an investor's journey of short-term rentals. Thank you for joining us, Joel.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Awesome.
So Joel, you and I have known each other for quite some time. So we started off knowing each other from church, right? Mm-hmm. And we've become friends and we've supported each other's businesses and endeavors. And so I asked you to come here because you have, throughout the years, you've shared with me some of your experiences investing in real estate. And you texted me a couple weeks ago saying, hey, I'm on my way to open my 9th, I think, right?
Yeah.
Short-term rental in Gatlinburg. And you and I had a little text discussion about that. And I really wanted to have you here to share with people, how do you connect the dots from being, hey, I'm thinking about investing in real estate, whether it's short-term, long-term, whatever it is, to where you are now? And that's why I had you here. So maybe you could just kind of tell your story, share what did that road look like for you? Maybe it'll kind of spark some, interest with somebody.
Sure. No, I mean, I appreciate the opportunity. It's great to be here with you guys. So, I was on my way to Gatlinburg to set up our latest, and I found the podcast helpful. Like, I think at that point, we were going through some tools and stuff that Kyle was leading through from the operational side, and lots of things were like, yep, nodding my head as I'm driving 14 hours up to Tennessee.
Love it. So people do actually listen to the podcast, Kyle.
Yeah. So my wife and I got started in real estate, I'd say accidentally, right? I think I'm probably not the only one that has that story. Mm-hmm. We had a house here in the DFW area, and we suddenly had to move out of state. And when we moved out of state, the thought was, how long are we going to be out? What do we want to do at our home, right? At that point, we're talking 2000. And so the market was, here in Dallas-Fort Worth, very stable and not crazy growth like we've seen recently. And so we decided we were going to rent our home at the time. And so we were moved to Virginia. And so we just converted our existing home into a rental. We didn't know anything that we're doing, right? Like we were first time homeowners. I think we'd only own a home for maybe 2 years at the time, right? Mm-hmm. No clue. So we hired a property management company at the time, which we didn't even know what question to ask, right? Or even how to figure that out, right?
So curious.
So we had
question.
A far superior, like less superior property management company, right? Than how
you have about a 7.5 out of 10 chance of getting a good one. So right now, anyways, I don't know what it was back then.
Yeah. No. Anyway, so that was our first experience, and so we were, in I think that was 2002 whenever we did that, when we converted it over. And then once we got up to Virginia, we kind of made it our goal as we saw it was working, and it was a good long-term strategy. I think at that point we decided, hey, we have 3 kids, and we're just going to kind of get one long-term for each of the kiddos, right? Mm-hmm. And eventually it would give us a college option, right? And so it was going to be our college plan, right? So we wanted to invest in real estate for our kids, and that was going to be their college plan when they got
better than a college fund, right?
Right. That was our thought. It was better than, we liked that option. It was more fun for me too than just putting it and let somebody else control it. At least I would have some opportunity to at least control the investment somewhat.
Love it.
So that's where we went. So it was a very slow process, right? Very unintentional. We really didn't have a lot knowing what we're doing.
I want to stop you.
Plowed through that.
I want to stop you, Joel, before you continue on your journey, because you just gave us some really great nuggets. Like, if there's anybody listening out there that's in that boat, like, who isn't in that boat, right? Who isn't had that as sometime in their life, they're there, right? At that place. We built our business on forced landlords, right? That's how we got started in this business, was what we called forced landlords that, just like you, couldn't sell your home. Hey, let's just go ahead and rent it. So that story it tells how you got motivated to get into it. But then after doing it, you're able to see the fruit, right?
Yep.
That's one of the things that really comes out of that to me is you were quickly able to see, hey man, this works. Like, look at this. Look at what passive income is doing for us. Why don't we do this for our kids? Right?
That's the real estate bug everyone always talks about. So.
I absolutely love it. I'm going to put this much money aside. Let's Kyle and I have talked about how, and I want you to continue your journey, but Kyle and I have talked about how sometimes it's smarter to take that money that you put every month into and put it in your 401k or your IRA or whatever we do with it, right? Wouldn't it be smarter to stick that into real estate or do what you did and put it into a quote unquote college fund that's actually a long-term rental for the kids? I love it. Good job. Way to go.
Now, I'm not going to say that, we still utilize 401k and through company matching and, you know, free money is free money, right?
You still have to do that. Yeah, absolutely.
So we're diversified in it at that point, right?
That's smart.
So we continued down that path, and any time that we would get like a bonus through work or we would save up another down payment, we kept purchasing these long-term rentals. And we weren't really accelerated, right? We were just slow, very slow and steady. We started our first one in 2002, and then it wasn't until 2018, 16 years later, right, that we had purchased our fourth one, right? So it was a very slow, kind of methodical, kind of
very
process.
Conservative, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that it takes the experience that you've been in to get to the point where you move quickly and you make quick decisions and right. It takes a bunch of positive experience that creates a certainty, right, that allows you to do what you probably have been doing since 2018. Am I right?
Yeah. No, we had a big inflection point, I guess, for us, and that was in 2018. We bought our fourth just down the road here in Waxahachie. And then in 19, one of our long-term rentals during a changeover from a tenant, it burned down. So during the remodel process, it burned. And, that kind of starts to think like, what are we going to do? How are we going to move forward? Right? You have a lot of options and they're all good options. We're blessed to have insurance, right? And we were in a good situation.
Right.
But, it was weird how stuff happens. At the same time, I lost my job because COVID was right around the corner. I'm in healthcare IT, right? And, healthcare had some issues. So we decided at that point, we're just going to go ahead and remodel or rebuild and then put a lot of upgrades in, and then we're going to sell the home, right? So when we did that, at that point, we started to evaluate what's the best way to kind of move forward, right? Do we just want to, split it up? Maybe now, since we have a lot of equity, this was our original home, right? In 2002, right? We had a 15-year note on it. So at this point, right, it was just about paid off. And so
looking to reinvest it.
Our return on equity, right, was pretty low at the moment, right? And so we had talked about what do we do with this? And at that point, we decided, okay, I had an off-market deal here in Mansfield, close to us, that we could reinvest it in. And so part of our funds went to that, and part of it decided to try out short-term rentals. I had been really looking into, how can we increase cash flow on a monthly basis, since, volatility and healthcare IT was there. How do we just take more control, right? Stop working for others, start working for us. And I've always been a entrepreneur at heart, right? And so, for me, it was exciting, right? And at that point, I felt it was a low risk, right? It was a big step. As you mentioned, right? Because our first one wasn't down the road. It wasn't right next door.
Right.
Right. It was in Tennessee, right?
Right.
Which is in the Smokies.
I can't wait to hear how you ended up in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Like, what was the decision making, or what was the journey that led you to say, this is where I want to start doing this?
Yeah. So I will say I'm always kind of a numbers guy. Just I just run numbers, and if a deal makes sense, then let's do it. Right.
Yep.
I try to remove my own bias, right, out of like a town or cities, right. Just do the numbers make sense, right. And so when I was looking at it,
I'm still trying to figure that out, Joel.
Right. It's tough. property taxes in Texas, as you know, right, for homes that you don't live in, you don't get the homestead exemption, right, or very high, right? Yep. And so they cut into your margins pretty significantly, right, when a big piece of your your gross rents, right, go to property taxes. So at that point, we were really looking at what are some other opportunities, what are some states that don't have the same property tax situation. And so got me started to thinking of Tennessee because they're a low property tax state. They're a no state income state. So there's 2 points right there. That is a great start, right? The other piece that really got us excited about the Smokies was the Great Smoky National Park, right? Which I hadn't really known too much about until I started researching, but it is the #1 visited national park in the country.
Really? That surprises me.
They get about 13 million visitors a year, right? We're also in the top 5 at other places you would think of, like Yellowstone, Grand Canyon, right? Yosemite, I mean. So it's astronomically higher, right? I think the number 2 is like around 5 or 6 million, right?
Huh.
That's surprising.
I wonder if that's because the amount of population on the East Coast.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the proximity.
It's relative to where people are going. You can
drive
anyway.
to it from. I mean, it's central,
almost anywhere,
right, on the east side, and we get gusts from, if you kind of just draw like a 6 or 7 mile radius, hour drive radius around Gatlinburg. I mean, they come from all directions, right, from the upper parts of Louisiana to Indiana to whatever, all different directions. I think the other big piece of it is it's not just a national park, right? They've got Pigeon Forge, which if you haven't been to Pigeon Forge is insane city. And Gatlinburg is great shopping and, there's distilleries and stuff is there as well.
And you said you're a numbers guy, so it sounds like, this all boils down to these are all the reasons that you determined there was a demand there for, for short-term rentals. And at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for. So
exactly. So
which is getting harder to find right now.
Yeah. So for us, we had a couple of, I guess, table stakes. And so for me, I really wanted like a 30% cash on cash return. So just meaning, to break that down, what does that mean for those of you who haven't seen that before? So if we'll just use dummy numbers, if we're talking about $100,000 purchase, right? And if you're putting 20% down, you're putting $20,000 into it and you might have some other startup costs. So maybe you're at like 35 after closing costs and stuff, right? So how long is it going to take me to recoup that $35,000 that I put in, right? If it takes you 3 years, then that's roughly 30%, right?
That's pretty good.
So that's my target, was to get my money back from the deal within a 3-year time period, right?
Yeah.
So that's my initial kind of gauge there. So that's where we got started, and
Joel's looking for a good deal. It's normal. I wouldn't say normal for short-term rentals, but in long-term investing, it's like 4 to 10 years is what they're looking for in their cash on cash. So, but we expect to get it back quicker with short-term rentals.
Yeah, we've done pretty good on that. What? So you started this in 2019, you said? So when you bought your first one?
Yeah, so we bought our first one in Tennessee in July of 2020.
Okay. Tell us how that first one went.
Yeah. So the first one we went with was a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, just a small little real log cabin. It had a lot of good updates, brand new flooring. Previous owner had put granite countertops in. It looked sharp. They weren't a very good operator, which is kind of an interesting aspect to this. I mean, up there especially, you can have 2 properties that are right next door that have very similar amenities, and you can have wildly different results, right?
Yep.
All the things that you guys talk about all the time that you do when you manage your properties, right? Around communication, around, automation, around having a strong customer service, responding quickly, right? All these things you talk about, right? Some people kind of set it and forget it, and just put like, hey, here's my weekday price and here's my weekend price. It doesn't matter if it's Christmas, doesn't matter if it's summer, everything's the same, and they're excited to tell you that they're 98% occupied for the year, right? Like that's their number,
right?
And I'm like, I don't want to be 98%.
I don't
and
care
they
about
look
that.
at me, they're like, what do you mean? Why don't you want to be 98%, right? Like
I'm making 3 times as much money
I
as
would
you
rather
are.
be 70%, right?
Right.
And have my property less wear and tear, right? But I'm charging more. And I'm still making more than your 98%, right? And so,
but more time with people in your unit means more problems, more supplies. It's not about occupancy; it's about what.
And
best
it's odd. This is a mindset change for me. The more you charge, the better guests you get, and the less complaints you get, the less needy, which is kind of a weird way of thinking about it. I know you didn't ask this, but like if people ask about a discount, usually for like right off the bat, before I usually just tell them, sorry, no discount. Maybe this isn't the right place for you, right? Because I'm not necessarily, because typically that's like a starting point, right? That goes downhill after that.
And they don't generally give you a reason to give them a discount. They're just asking for one, right?
Sometimes if they're asking for a military discount or something, I mean, our ex-military are kind of trained to do that. So sometimes that's a little bit more normal, but you're absolutely right. If they're asking for it up front, they're going to ask for it later on, or look for a reason to ask for it later on.
Or they see other properties and they're like, I'm about to book these other ones and I wanted to ask you for a discount. Well, you're asking me because you want mine, and there's a reason it's more than theirs. So, that is what it is.
Good point. So, okay. So Joel, you've bought that first one. It's going well. It sounds like you were killing it right off the bat. Sounds like you went through that learning curve pretty quick. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, when we purchased in the Smokies, we got started with it was a pretty great local realtor group, and they specialized in out of town investors, saying that part of the deal with a transaction is go through them, and they would also kind of get you kick-started, right, to kind of show you the ropes to a limited degree, right? But then get you started with like, here's an initial set of cleaners, maintenance guys. They're still on you to interview and hire and select and those types of things. But
they were holding your hand
to get you started, right? It's part of their value proposition, which was that's good, a helpful way, right? To do that.
Love it.
So my initial thoughts were on this place that I mentioned that whenever we sold this house that we rebuilt, we purchased a long-term rental here in Texas, actually in Mansfield. And then the other part of the funds, we bought the short-term rental. And for us, the short-term rental at that point only needed to gross somewhere around like $35,000 for me to make it worth it, right? The previous owner said he grossed 37. Just looking at his listing and how he did everything, I don't know, kind of confident that I could at least match it, right? I didn't see anything amazing that he was doing, right? And so part of it was our timing. I realized, right, like we got in at a great time because this is 2020. This is now Tennessee is a very southern state, right? And so the same COVID protocols that they might have in California are not necessarily prevalent in Tennessee. So people are traveling, right? And
you can say they were flooding to the
record travelers,
for vacation,
right? Yeah. So just rates went sky high.
There's like 3 states you could
Alabama
go to.
was
sky high, right? I know there was a time, right, where the beaches or Florida was shut down. Tennessee just welcomed all those people, right? Yeah. And so I realized that my numbers were a little skewed that first year because of that. But in the first 4 months, I had hoped that we could get, in our mid 30s for a whole year. In the first 4 months on this little 1-bedroom, we had earned $35,000 in 4 months, right? Just on a gross. We still have expenses, obviously, but. So that just got us thinking, like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Like,
love it.
Let's keep going. And so at that point, we bought our second one in December of the same year, 2020.
Wow. So you quickly
quickly pivoted.
So hold on. It took you 16 years to go from one long-term rental to 4, and then literally 9 months to go. Man, we've got to do this again.
That was 5
when
months.
you got to short-term rentals.
Yeah.
Was it 5 months?
That's what he said. Yeah.
Yep. Sorry. That's amazing.
He hit his target. It sounds like you hit your milestone in 4 months, and you're like, well, get the next one.
But see, that's more to my point where, okay, Joel, maybe you can attest to this. When you've got some experience behind you, whether it doesn't matter what the experience is, if you have some successful experience behind you, it makes it easier going forward. The more of that you have behind you to make quick, certain decisions, right? Like, I already know what my worst case scenario is, but I also know what my potential reward is. Boom, let's go. Or no, I don't want to mess with that, right? And
yeah, you know what it really comes down to is just taking action.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, do your analysis, know your numbers, know, what your targets are. But I see a lot of fellow investors that are just trying to get started. They just want to keep analyzing.
They overanalyze.
This is analysis paralysis. They just keep going and going. It's like, are you sure? What do you think? And they want to talk to 12 people and interest rates are going up, prices are going the wrong way, right? And
you wait around for the perfect storm, right? Is what people do, and you can't do that. I mean,
so just taking action, being smart, right? And going in there educated and we're a fan of having reserves and you're not overly leveraged, but taking action, I think, was the key. But you're right. It took us 16 years to get 4 properties, right? And then, as I'll get into in a second, then we just went 2 properties, right, in 6 months.
Yeah.
And so at this point, we decided that we aren't really going to use any of these funds for vacations or for a car or anything like that for the family. We're just going to reinvest. So anything that comes out as a net is just getting reinvested. We're building up our reserves. We have a capital account. We have an expense account, right, for these short-term rentals. And at this point, I feel like I'm getting very plugged into the area. We've got a team. This is all because of a team that you hired. You guys talk about this all the time, right? Who is your cleaner? Who is your maintenance guy, right?
We refer to it all as boots on the ground.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm a huge relationship guy. That's like, I'm a people connector, I think is my strength. And so for me, it was, how do I build these relationships? How do I introduce these cleaners to other high volume? I'm not a high volume investor at this point, but other folks who have a lot of units, right? That can be easy for them, right? And then add value. How do you add value to these team members? And so I was growing the team, and the next year, 2021, we continued. We bought another place off market. There was an investor who posted it in Facebook group, said, "Hey, I'm thinking of selling." Fantastic, right? So we just did a direct transaction there in March of 21 on a place, and then I had 2 additional places in May, all in the Smokies. So within the first year, we had
great
the first 12
rates.
months we had expanded to 5 in the Smokies, and at that point, I'd mentioned earlier that we had a lot of. I get a question actually pretty often, like, well, how do you buy 5 houses in 12 months, right? I mean, these at this point, right, like 1 bedrooms in the Smokies, or this is 2020, right, are going for $300,000, right? And that was the smallest, right, of the 5 homes that we had bought, right? And so, but this is not like a get rich quick thing, right? I mean, we have already been in real estate, right, since 2002, right? And then when we started these long-term rentals, our goal wasn't to cash flow necessarily. We had 15-year notes on all of these properties, right? And so our goal was just to build equity for college, right? Because we expected our kids, to go to college in 15-something years, not 30 years, right? So we wanted them paid off or have we started leveraging some of that equity, right, through a cash-out refinance, right, for example, to be able to pull out a good amount of that equity and start using
we talk about that a lot, don't we?
Rolling that forward, right? So yes, there's costs to doing that, right? You're having to pay closing costs on these cash out refis. Like your interest rates are almost always going to be higher, right?
Yeah,
Cash outs.
Usually, but
not higher than if you were to get unsecured money.
sure.
So that's the benefit.
Yes, cheaper than a hard money loan, right? Or other products that are out there.
So have you used? We've talked a lot about the BRRRR method. Have you used the BRRRR method in any of your
You
units?
just described it.
Yeah, no, the way that I understand the BRRRR method, I would say we didn't. I think on all of these properties that we go, key for me is I look for properties where I can add value, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean the BRRRR method.
Right.
That just means that it could be a lot of different things. And so one example was we had a great place that when I got there and I looked at it, this is another off-market Facebook deal that I found. I was looking at the property and it was really high. It's high in a mountain. Like man, we have an acre, but most of it's unusable. It's just straight down a mountain, right? I'm like, well, why don't you cut those trees down, right? Like
make that usable, yeah.
And he's like, well, I don't know. Like, you if you cut those trees down, you'll be able to see for 15 miles and have an amazing view. Like, well, the guy just wanted to spend money, and so we cut some trees down, and I paid a local $1,000 to cut about 20 trees down, and
now you have a breathtaking
amazing
view.
Views, right? And like that's the number one amenity on that property is views, right?
Look at that.
And there in the Smokies, for example, if you have a place with views versus a place with no views, right, that can affect your gross by about $25,000, right? So, I mean, it's those types of things where we look for, hey, how can we add value? Not necessarily what I think of as a traditional BRRRR strategy where I'm, going through all those steps, but we just look for value add properties or space that's underutilized, that type of thing.
So one of the things, Joel, that I'm hearing that I think is really important, and I want people to kind of get from what you're saying, because I'm reading between the lines a little bit, I'm understanding a little bit, because I've done the same thing that you're doing, right? That's kind of what we've done in Orange Beach, where we really got plugged in, and I love to hear how you went there. You built a network, you got plugged in, you're on Facebook groups, probably Smoky Mountain Investors referral group, and you're probably in about
that's pretty
40.
Much, you almost hit the name of it amazingly.
Okay.
But we're in a few of these too. Yeah.
You're probably in about 40 of these different groups, right? If I'm right. If and so you find them, you get in, it gets you plugged in. You're plugged in with a cleaner and your handyman, right? And the investment group you're talking about, and there's probably a bunch of other people you've met along the way where you really learned how to not just go and focus on a property, but to go get plugged into a community. What's the value here? I've probably spent a lot of time there now. You know what restaurants to go to, you know where people want to go. So when people call you and say, hey, how far away are you from Pigeonhole? You're able to tell them that I've got this property that's 4.3 miles away from Pigeon. Did I get it right? Pigeonhole?
I've never heard it called Pigeonhole.
Pigeonhole.
Yeah,
what is
Pigeon
it again?
Forge.
Pigeon Forge. Sorry about that. Hey, we need to create a new city out there called Pigeonhole. But anyways, you know what I'm saying? So it gives you. I can tell that you've been really, really plugged into the community. And it gives you an advantage, right? A leg up instead of just looking at it as a property or a number, right? Investment.
It definitely helps. I mean, as I mentioned, I'm a relationship guy. And so, when you find a team, for example, right? I mean, I send steaks to our cleaners, right? Like I say, hey, thank you for, we've had 3 months of just amazing reviews. Here's some steaks for you guys. And then I'll send them a cash bonus to the actual cleaners, right? Because they have a couple of crews that go around.
Yeah.
Like they never get that from other owners, right? That's a total different game, right? And then now, I get updates on how their kids doing, right? And like how their family life and let's be honest, my business would not exist without them, right?
Yeah, you understand that
I'm
how
just
valuable.
extremely appreciative, right, of the value that they give me, right? And so what's a way I can show that, right? And not just to separate myself from other owners, but just how do I show them how thankful we are, right? That they do invest.
Because that's
such
one of
time,
those.
you know?
That's great that you do that, because that's one of those pieces that like can make or break this business and this industry. Is you get bad turnovers and bad cleans, that leads to bad reviews, but it also leads to refunds, and you're still paying for it.
What's $200? Right?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, it's a lot less than you lose on one misclean,
right? Like if there is a lot of times, it's so funny how this can happen at a place. You can have one vacationer, right, who says like it's just complaint city on everything, and this actually just happened when I was in Pigeon Forge last week. We just had there's just everything was wrong, right? Like you could not make this person happy. And I know there's other things going on, right, in their life, right? And this is just the I don't know, the way they can take it out on somebody, right?
Right.
And then I was even in town, so I was like, this cannot be that bad. So my cleaner already went out, right, and sent somebody out as soon as they arrived, right, to fix something that they weren't happy about, and they were still not happy. So I went and visited, and it was one of those where I looked around like, this place is great, right? I don't know what they're talking about. But you have to have a different mindset, right? At that point, right? Like part of me wanted to just say, all right, just get these guys out of the cabin, right? And just maybe I'll go find a place that works for them. Right. But they're there and they paid for a vacation. They are on vacation, right? Or wrong, right? You want them to have an amazing time, right? And so, instead of that, I will go ahead and we have a local creamery shop around the corner that I'll call and get them a gift card with their name on it. And like, hey, sorry, it didn't start off with the greatest first impression, even though that's not how I really feel. You're just trying to put your customer service hat on,
because it's about the guest experience,
right? Get them to get out of the house, right, and go enjoy all your surroundings. Here's a local favorite, right?
Get out of the cabin you claim to hate so much and go enjoy the rest of it.
Because if you can't fix what can't be fixed, you can try to fix their perspective, right? Because at the end of the day, those people are usually just being unreasonable, but they can't be made happy in other ways.
And I tell you, as soon as they left, the next guest, right, I don't know, oh my gosh, best experience ever, greatest cabin, everything's perfect. And I'm like, how is that possible? It's the same place.
You know what it is? It's because I've had this happen too. When you go into town and it's something, you get that guest. You always get that guest when I'm randomly, I won't be there for 3 months. I'll come into town for 2 days, and for some reason I got to go to that unit and deal with a guest in person.
Does that not happen every time I'm in Orange Beach?
Every time you're there, every time I'm there.
Every single time. Something happens. It doesn't
Remember
ever
when
happen.
I was there was a hailstorm that hit Orange Beach. Once in a century hailstorm that destroyed everybody's cars. So
question, did you, is Gatlinburg or that area of the Smoky Mountains, is that an opportunity zone? Is that one of the things that drew you there?
That did not drew me. Actually, I didn't really know about opportunity zones until maybe about 6 to 9 months ago. We have as you can imagine, I have a group of short-term investors that meet here in Dallas-Fort Worth every month, and opportunity zones has been a topic for us the last 6 months, but that didn't initially get me out there. No,
but is it in an opportunity zone?
They have parts of it are
okay. All right. So have you managed to take advantage of that? But you have anything in one of those? No. Okay. I mean, I know that. We're managing up in Broken Bow, and that's one of the things that's really created an explosion up there, right? That's a huge advantage, right? Tax advantage.
Well, to clarify, we've never talked about opportunity zones, so it's not just a zone we're deeming an opportunity. This is
something actually. I believe it was Joe Biden created, right, or his administration, or was it Trump's administration? Somebody's administration created an opportunity zone. So. Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
All right.
I won't get into why, but
okay. Maybe we'll do a separate podcast on opportunity zones.
There you go.
So basically the opportunity zone, right, are areas that are deemed kind of, I guess, up and coming, or that need some development. So the government, right, has offered tax incentives or not charging as much taxes if you go, and I don't know all the rules around them, but if you go and develop and you hold them for a certain period of time, then
they take less out of your pocket for a certain amount of time.
Then you pay less on taxes, which can make the deal make more sense on paper, right?
Yeah.
And they're all over the map.
They do it to attract investors to areas they want to be developed. You know,
vacation markets typically aren't don't, traditionally, as you wouldn't think, right? It's not going to be in the area of the vacation market that a lot of vacationers would want to go, right? Like it's not going to be on the beach, right?
But it might be nearby. Like they're trying to expand it or draw out of one area.
Yeah.
So now where are we now? Now you've bought 5 in the Smoky Mountains.
Yeah.
Right.
And you've built a business around
You're plugged in. You're doing great. Right. You're having good experiences. These are 5 different types of units, it sounds like. And so you're getting some experience on what it's like to rent out a 1-bedroom cabin. And I'd imagine some of those are probably a little bit bigger than that, right?
Yeah. So at this point, we've got a 1-bedroom, couple of 3 bedrooms, and another 1 and a 2. I think that's 5. And the interesting I'm learning there now is in the Smokies, every market has its own different set of amenities, like I would call like a requirement, right? And then what are the set of amenities that you can do to really stand out, right? And so if you're here in Dallas-Fort Worth and you have an arcade machine and a hot tub, you're like, I don't know, like top 5% of like amenities, maybe
swimming pool,
like a pool, like there's not very many that have those, right? And those are stand out, right? If you have an arcade machine and a hot tub and the Smokies, well, congratulations! Like everybody's got the same thing, right? Like that's a requirement, right? There are arcade companies in the Smokies that just exist, right? To fill these cabins.
Just like in Broken Bow, if you don't have a hot tub, you're not getting bookings,
right?
Exactly.
You have to have a hot tub.
Everybody's got a hot tub.
So that's market specific to figuring out like what are your competition doing. How do you really stand out? And so in the Smokies, a big piece of that is indoor pools. So, which I always never familiar with before. But yeah, these cabins have on the lowest level, right? Most of these are built on a hillside, and the lowest level have an indoor pool. It's heated 24 hours a day, sitting at 86 degrees. So I came across a 1-bedroom, had an indoor pool. So that was one of these 5 that we had built or bought. We haven't built any of these. These are all existing. And I would say that each of these 5 that we bought, for me anyways, it was really important that, like as I mentioned, you could add value. But a lot of them were either mom and pop, like, hey, we have 1 property, we live out of state. Right. We kind of like the vacation there, but they're not really serious about the business. Right. And so they're not really utilizing the space well. They have 30-year-old furniture, right? White appliances and not stainless, as you would kind of expect. Or they were, unfortunately, in the Smokies, there are some property management companies up there that have been around for 40, 50 years, and they refuse to list like on Airbnb, VRBO, things like that, right? These listing platforms. Old school. Yeah. The only way you're going to find them is if you Google like Pigeon Forge Cabin Rental and you see their company name and you like they're not taking advantage, right? I know you guys use all of these platforms, right? And you're much smarter than some of these old school guys. So it was very easy, right, to add value,
beat them,
right? To beat them, right? Your competition, right?
Yeah.
Was a little bit less, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Well, at the end of the day, you got to consider your competition. If there's a market where has a decent amount of demand, and I look and there's one competitor with 90% market share, and they're doing really good at it, maybe I'll go somewhere else. Or the opposite of that. There's no big dog in this area, so those are all points you want to look at when you do your analysis.
So moving forward, so now I've discovered, right, pools, right, is for me, like, I mean, I didn't invent the pool, right? I mean, these pools have been in there, but I just kind of dawned on me, right, now that I've got 5 and I have 1 with a pool, because they're more expensive cabins, right?
Right.
And so for example, like this 1-bedroom, 1 bath that we bought without a pool, right, was $350 at the time, right?
Okay.
Maybe $360, kind of hazy. I can't remember exactly. But the one with the pool, right? We bought that for like $510, right? So it's considerable difference, right? And so at that point, that was about the same price as a 2-bedroom, right? Like the 1-bedroom pool or a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. They were about the same price. But the 1 bedroom with a pool, right, for me, consistently gross an additional like $50,000 a year, right? So it doesn't take that long to make up that difference.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Sounds like 3 years, just like, fits into your formula.
That's right.
So it's the driver, and then so since then, that was at 5, and we now are up to we have 9 total, or 7 in the Smokies, and we're under contract for a couple of additional new builds that will be in 2023.
Love it.
We also kind of moved to Gulf Shores. We have one in Gulf Shores, not too far from your places in Orange Beach. And we have, this was going so well that one of our long-term rentals here in Mansfield, we converted it to a short-term.
Okay. All right.
For me at the time, it was fairly easy to do because you have the machine rolling.
You have the tools.
Right?
Yeah.
I think when I was in Tennessee, I even picked up a Whiskey Barrel arcade from our guys who make them for us, and the Smokies are brought it down here just because they didn't, it's something to be different, right? But it's really kind of grown for us, and I think our goals have changed, right? Initially, our goals were, how do we pay for, one kid, each kiddo gets a house, right? And I know that kind of messed it up when we got 4. We only have 3 kids. But now it's really turned into how do we give us more freedom, right? I still work. I kind of pick up contract health IT opportunities, but we're less reliant on it, right? And my wife still works, so we get insurance through her, which is great. But it allows us to have a little bit more flexibility. Which we've been blessed for sure as we move forward. And, I think it really just comes down to taking that step, be smart, don't over leverage, but really taking action, being very purposeful, all these things that make people successful, right? And I think we've done well, right? But my goals and aspirations are a little bit higher than where I'm at now, right? I think you're always kind of pushing.
Yeah.
Right?
They change as you go. As you go through that journey, your goals have changed. I'm sorry, Kyle. I didn't mean to step on you.
Especially when you do well, success and failure in these things can drive you to do more. But, your journey in the short-term rental business has only been 2 years, as you just stated, and it sounds like you've done pretty well. So that's inspiring. I'm sure it's inspiring to you to continue. But also, I hope it's inspiring to others.
Kyle, one of the things I hear listening to Joel, though, that I hope people get is that this wasn't an overnight journey. Like that's what you and I talk about, these TikTok sensations, these young kids say, hey, do this. They make it sound like you can just go do this and overnight quit your job and be a millionaire. And I suppose there's probably some people that have done that in the past when they caught the beginning of the wave, maybe. But right now we're in 2022. Cat's out of the bag. Everyone knows about short-term rentals. Everyone's using them, buying them, right? There's a lot more of a market for it than there was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So I feel like the thing to come away from a bunch of other little things is the time it took for you to get from there to here. It's okay. That's what every good business should be, slow and steady. Like, you don't get rich in anything you do overnight. But again, it's real estate. So as Kyle and I talk about all the time, we're focusing right now on your business and your income and your revenues and all that stuff. But you know what's happening while you're doing all that is you are building extreme amount of wealth through equity from owning all these properties. So when I don't know what age you want to retire, but it doesn't matter. You can retire whenever you want. You can let this go.
Retirement is all a peace of mind. I guess it's a perspective, right?
Right. So. Well, retirement is defined differently for you and I than it is in past generations. Yeah. But what I mean is when you decide you don't want to do this anymore, you can turn it over to the kids and say, here's a great business. You can just send me a check, or you could sell it all, right? And as a business, especially your short-term rental business, you could sell these things as businesses now that have extreme amount of value beyond what the actual property is.
No, and I think you're right. I mean, I know I've just been talking around cash flow, right? And that's initially why we made the shift. But
well, that's important.
there are a lot, as you guys know, that's just one piece of the pie, right?
Right.
You still have vacationers, right? That are in your properties all year round. They're paying down your principal, right? They're paying your mortgage for you, right?
That's right.
You still have, I know we've kind of stopped this a bit, but you still have values are, they're still going to go up, right? Like over time, right? Value of these homes themselves, right, are going to go up. And I didn't even touch about this, but with the short-term rentals, you also have some significant tax opportunities. Which I'm not a tax professional, so
good clarification.
Don't take any of my word as
CPA advice.
Yeah, CPA advice. But through things like cost segregation, where you can accelerate depreciation schedules, right? You have a significant opportunity, right, to really help yourself out with taxes, and that's really, I mean, when you're talking about those four things between cash flow and principal and, your value going up and your tax savings, I mean, it's an amazing opportunity for somebody who wants to invest the time, right? Like, I hear that a lot. It's like, well, it'd be great, but I don't have that much time, right? And I'm sure you guys see this in your business all the time. The first couple, take, if you don't know anything, right, take a lot of time to figure it out, right? It's because you're just a new business, like any new business, right? Trying to get it started and get your processes and get your automation down and your tool sets and your team, all this stuff isn't just there. But once you've got, several in your portfolio, just adding another one, right, really isn't a big deal.
Yeah, that's right.
Like the setup is, right?
Yeah.
And the setup's a big deal. And the setup's always a big deal.
The setup of each one. But the learning curve is what you're talking about. The learning curve is what that big deal is. And once you get through the learning curve, the initial learning curve, there's always little learning curves as you go along. But that initial learning curve, getting everything in place, like you said, everything else after that is plug and play. Just plug another one in and go.
When we talked a couple weeks ago about the numbers, right? And even what you've described can still be done if you did have a manager, if you weren't doing all this, you could have still done all this with a manager. I mean, what you talked about was really the investment journey. You've obviously made it better and more expedited by taking it into your own hands. But,
Yeah. I mean, my journey was just one way to go, right? I found myself without a job, right?
Yeah.
I had time, right? I had, an opportunity to really dig in, right? Not everybody is in that same position, right? And so this would be really difficult, right? If I'm working a 60-hour job, my wife's working a 50-hour job, right?
That's right.
Like that's
exactly right.
It's a different role, right? And as you know, right, there's a pretty big scale on property managers who just like collect your check, right? And that really add value, right? And there's a big gap in the middle. And so as I kind of mentioned earlier, right, it's like you have some really old archaic, right, property management teams up in the Gatlinburg area, right? So that it's different, but
it rapidly changes, right? That's another piece. Is like you could have someone, even a manager. You have a great manager that's great right now, and the systems you need right now that doesn't spend the next 2 years adapting, and because we've had a lot of adapting, even in the last 2 years that we've had to do in this industry since we started. I won't even get into how much adapting you've had to do, but it's a journey that you have to constantly stay ahead of the game. It sounds like you've done that. So
COVID was constant adaptation, wasn't it?
Yeah, and everyone says, "Oh, how'd you make it through COVID?" And they get amazed at my stories of the pivots we made to thrive off COVID. And that's a whole other podcast. But you got to meet the demand and know where it's at.
I'm curious to see what Joel thinks about this because he was pre-COVID, right? You started this business right before COVID, or right at the beginning
really
of it.
Post-COVID, because I mean, really, I know the Smokies and the beaches were all hit. Like I'd say, April, May were really the downers of 2020, right? And we came in July, and I think that was helpful for us. One, obviously because of the volume, but when we were closing in July, the volume didn't hit yet, right? When we're closing. So I think our sellers, right, that we were buying from had just gone through a couple of really bad months, right?
Well, March and April,
then they weren't really sure, like none of us knew, right?
Yeah.
Like what did it look like going forward, right? And so I was taking a bit of a gamble of projecting, hey, I think people are going to start traveling.
This isn't going to last forever.
He was like, okay, if I sell, I'll make some equity. I've owned this place for 10 years, right? Which is just go now, right?
Yeah.
And so both of us, I think, were taking a little bit of a gamble. But no, we were definitely post-COVID,
Okay.
I'd say, on that standpoint.
Every investment's a little bit of a gamble. You got if there's no risk, there's no reward. So it sounds like it played out because 2020 was an interesting year for short-term rentals, but there was definitely ways to thrive in it.
Kyle, I know you have a question for him. Let's kind of wrap up the story. I mean, you've got 4 long-term rentals now. You've got 9 in Tennessee and 1 in Gulf Shores. Did I get that right?
So, well, now we have 3 long-term rentals.
You sold one to start right.
Well, we did have 4. We converted one of them to short-term. So now we have three long-term rentals, and we have
1 here in Texas.
7 in Tennessee, 1 in Gulf Shores, 1 in Texas.
Got it.
And
you got 2 more coming
others in contract that are new builds that they were on the way.
Yeah. Love it. Kyle, you were dying to ask Joel a question when we started this about his takeaways.
Oh yeah, no, like now that you've been through this experience, this is a great point in the journey to ask you this. But what are your main takeaways for someone who may want to go do what you've done?
So I would say first to take action, right? Like that's the key. Yeah. None of this starts if we don't ever take, if pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. I mean, we're doing so with due diligence and numbers, ask a lot of questions, right, and learning, but taking that step, I think I'd say the hardest thing of all, right? Just what are we doing buying a place in Tennessee that's 14 hours away? What happens if the toilet breaks, right? What happens if they're locked out, right? Like, what am I going to do, right? Like getting past that barrier in your brain. Even our long-term rentals, we've got one up in Allen, right? Which was from us, right? That's like an hour drive and traffic. It could be could be up to 2-hour drive, like in worst case. Right. What happens if their toilet breaks, right? Like, what happens if a pipe bursts there, right? I'm going to call somebody, right?
That's right.
Whether you're 5 minutes down the road or you're 14 hours away, you're going to do the same.
If you have a
thing.
great property management company, right? Yeah. Then it's a different scenario,
That's
right? But that was kind of initially getting over what I kind of see as like a roadblock, right? That didn't really exist, but it was just my comfort zone. So getting past that, the other piece is as we talked a little bit around communication and just really being able to put on a customer service hat, even though you're right, but you're trying to make things right with them. One other piece, I think it would be helpful if you are in like the early stages, and so I'm married. We've been married for 22 years now, and as we kind of go through this, one of the things that we started to think about, and notice this might be kind of an advanced topic on scaling, but as you're looking at places, you're limited to the number of loans that you can get, right, through a Fannie or a Freddie, right, a conventional rate or a loan. And so one of the things that my wife and I have started to do on our second or third purchase is once we got that first tax return, so we started in 2020, and we had one home for about half the year. The other one was just maybe a month. When we got the next return, right, both of us were on the title. And so both of our incomes, right, showed the gross, right, from the prior year, which helped us both, right, in our debt to income ratio, right? So going forward, what we decided to do was to start alternating who's on the loan, right? And so one place Claire would be on the loan, the next one maybe I'm on the loan, and we'd kind of alternate, but we're both on the title, right? Yeah. So we're both getting credit for the income, but only one of us takes a hit for for the expense.
That's smart.
You know,
Very smart. Yep.
So it helps you avoid or try to, it still takes a tax return or two, but it gets you, your DTI is, blown out of the water, right? Because you're getting credit for, both of us are getting credit, right, for 9 short-term rentals, right? But we're only like getting hit on
on
the mortgages and property taxes and whatever on half of it, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that should allow you to keep going all the way to 20.
Right. And then at that
Fannie Mae or
point,
Freddie
instead of 10, you can hit 20 if you're able to go that route. So if you don't do that up front, I mean, I know not everybody has 2 full-time people, right, in the same situation. But if you were to start with 1 short-term rental, go through a calendar year, and then get your tax return, it could help. It's a way to.
I think the point there is too to make sure both spouses are on, right? If you're both in the business, then make sure they're both on title, right?
Make sure they're
but
both
not on the loan. Is what he's saying.
But not on the loan, right?
Because there's benefits to that, and even that can apply to partners too. They're not all the same benefits as far as DTI, but you could have a partnership where you're trying to get to 20, and 10 of these loans are on one person's, 10 are on another person's. It just depends, and there's a way to maximize. We're saying 10 without specifying why. You get capped at 10. As far as the Freddie and Fannie conventional.
So that's something to know or to think about. It's much harder to go back and fix everything if you're like 5 short-term rentals in,
right?
Especially as interest rates have risen, right? It may not make sense at that point. So it takes a refinance, right, to get them off, to make sure you qualify by yourself. So it's just that. Have that plan, kind of think through it anyways, and just be purposeful. I think that was something that really helped us scale.
How are interest rates affecting your business right now?
It's making it more selective on what makes sense. I really think that with the inventory and these things, vacation markets anyways, inventory's gone up, rightfully so, and interest rates, are going up. And so prices are coming down. Not all cabins are in the same position, or homes, short-term rentals. Some owners are doing just great, and they're just kind of, if I can get it, I can get it. But you never know the situation, right, of the seller. With hustle, I really think that there's deals to be had out there, right? I mean, as you guys know, you live this on a daily. I mean, there's signs to figuring out, right? Like who's motivated, right? And looking at days on market and decreases, and just by your networks, so I mean, there's deals to be had. I think but now you just need to be more selective, right? And in 2020, we have massive amounts of people going to the Smokies. Even the unupdated cabins were making money. They're getting occupied. But now that inflation has gone up, gas prices have gone up, we're still seeing a lot of travelers. But there's been a lot more hosts, right? There's been a lot of new builds. I think the bar's been raised a bit, right? On the experience and the hosting experience. And so it takes just making sure the deal makes sense, and that you're not just buying a regular cabin, like you're finding one that stands out now, right? Like, hey, does this one have a theater, right?
Well, and that's all and that's all recognizing in any analysis market conditions, because we've been through the last year of travelers or travel, you cooped everybody up in the house for a year. So we had a travel demand that was a huge boom. You want to make sure that whatever you do in this area still makes money or still at the top of the market when the boom goes down, because as the occupancy demand goes down, your market share, the market share of occupancy is going to go down. And if you can keep that consistent, you're winning. And that puts you at the top. We didn't really go too deep into the setup. I imagine, or you did mention for a second, that setup is a very important piece of this. We just did a whole episode on the cost of setup. I guess what's your advice on how important it is to make sure the setup is done correctly?
Yeah, so we've done it 9 times now.
Yeah, sounds like it.
It's the most important part of you can go through every step, you can get a good deal, You can have a good location. But if you just don't spend your time on setting it up, it's for naught, right? Because
I can't go cheap on the setup.
You're not going to be maximizing the value, right?
Yeah.
No, I definitely think that decor and understanding the amenities in the market and making sure that you have those plus one, spend the money up front because you will get it back in the long run, right? And so whatever it takes you to get in that top 10%, right, of properties in your market, spend it, right? Because if you don't, it's just going to be a slow cut. Because later on, you're probably going to do it anyways, right? Like if your goal is to be in the top percent, 10%, and
but then you're chasing. Then you have a track record of the previous condition. So are you going to start over? Yeah,
and reviews. Right?
So are you going to start over? Or are you going to try to build off that? And make that reputation better, which we know is harder. Say you have a 4-star average, bringing that up to a 5-star is harder than just starting there, and it definitely affects your cash flows and monetary efforts.
One thing related to setup that we found, it's interesting. I was going through all of our reservations for the past 12 months, right, across all of our properties or in 3 different markets, which just for some data points, right, like over the last 12 months, we've hosted for 1,700 nights and like 466 reservations, across direct bookings, Airbnb, and VRBO. And out of all of those bookings, 70% of the folks that book with us are a female, right? And so a mom, a wife.
They're usually the ones making that purchase.
They're the
decision.
ones that are making or are looking right and like physically making the selection, right? Or at least bringing it down to the favorites that they want their family to consider.
So what you're saying is appeal to the women.
So appeal, right? Make sure that your listings, right, are written with that in mind, that perspective, right? Yeah. You want to make it relaxing, right? Like if you have a spa-like bathroom, right? You things that are going
to trying to highlight the cigar lounge and the golf simulator probably isn't such a great idea.
Yeah, not that those aren't cool amenities, but they probably shouldn't be like very highlighted top of your listing, right?
But like something simple like makeup mirrors, people love that. If you can add that,
you're right. It's the hey, have a hair dryer. Make sure you have hair dryers in your bathroom.
Yeah.
Every bathroom.
Have that fancy hair dryer bag.
Yeah.
Right. And they sit in the bag. Right. Have your makeup towels.
Yes.
Right. And they're black. Right. Too. And they're sitting right there, and they're on your pictures. Right. It's if you have a hot tub, right? Have your have it staged when you get your photography. We didn't even mention photography, but have it staged so your wine, right? You have a wine setup, right? Like appeal to romance, and just try to pull that together in your listing. Tell that story.
Well, you don't have rose petals in your hot tub when they arrive.
Yeah.
But we do in the pictures.
Hey, there was rose petals in here. How come? That's funny.
But no, I think that was a big. It's a big component of when we're putting our listings together. Just know who's booking these things.
Yeah,
and that's smart.
And not like because a lot of times it got me thinking of what would I want, right? Well, I'm not the one usually booking these according to my data, right?
Who's your audience? You should know that from before you ever buy.
I'm definitely in the 30% in my family, man. I'm always the one that has to push the button. I'm like,
well, you're in the business, right?
I'm the only one that'll make a decision in my family. So here, we're doing this one.
You're excluding me because I also have to be the one to do that.
Well, that's true.
So.
See, Kyle's that way too. So we're action takers like you, Joel. So, hey, Joel, I got a question for you then. So this has been this has really been inspirational. I love hearing your story, and I hope other people are getting some gems from it and some inspiration, maybe to take some of that action. What would you looking back, what would you do different?
That's, it's a tough one because when you look back at your experiences, I think they all kind of just build off each other. Yep. And, timing is everything. I don't know. Like
if you had the benefit of hindsight, right?
I think what he's saying is true. Is your failures build,
they help you
just as much.
I
as
guess
successes.
because I mean, it sounds weird to say, but I'm sure many people have experienced some sort of trauma or a loss of job, things like that, right? And when those things happened to me, right, they became inflection points, right, or they really kind of spurred things on, right? So we had a house burned down,
positive
right?
Instead of a negative.
We lost a job, right? Those things, and in my brain, like, made me start. What can I do differently, right? How do I just change gears or change perspectives or I like real estate. Like, that's always been a passion of mine anyways, right? I'm the guy who's always looking at houses, right? Like, for even though we're not buying, and my wife tells me put it away, right? Like, just in case, you never know. But I don't know if there's something that I would specifically do that's different. I think.
Would you do it faster?
I would definitely get started a little earlier. I know we got started in
as
2002,
early as you could,
but we weren't real purposeful.
Yeah,
right. It was just kind of, hey, we have some money saved up, or we got a bonus from the job or something, and then we would just buy another home, right? But if we would have, at least kind of been more purposeful and had a more of a plan, I guess, like that put together. Who's to say, what kind of conversation we would be having.
Sounds like you would have had just more seed money for the short-term rentals, and then you'd have 18 now instead.
Yeah, I mean, the best time to buy real estate is yesterday, right? So,
and that's always the case, isn't it, Joel?
Yeah, like
always.
I wish I could have bought like these. I would have done this all in 2019 and 2020, right? Like, I mean, if I had a time machine, right? As soon as COVID hit and all the sellers were like super panicking in the Smokies, I wish we could just bottom all up at that point, right? Of course. But
do we have the first Airbnb in our town, Kyle?
Yeah. First one that made
first two,
money.
I think.
Yeah.
I think we had the first two.
We had the top two. So.
And they're still the top two because they've been around the longest.
And nobody wants to compete with them. So.
Love it. What a good discussion, Joel. Thanks for coming in and sharing it with us and taking your time, man. I know how valuable everyone's time is. And for you to do this, to come in and just share with us and our audience, you're inspiring me. I hope you're inspiring other people. You know what? You've inspired me to go visit the Smoky Mountains. I've never been there. I'd love to go see it and check it out. We're going to have to book one of your cabins.
I just heard that he inspired you to go buy one.
That's his. That's his
area. Well, Joel, if anyone wants to check out these beautiful Smokies cabins or any other ones you got, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so especially John, if you want to go ahead and book, you can just go to
my phone's over there. Otherwise, I'd already be doing it.
redglidergetaways.com.
Red Glider Getaways.
We have a red metal glider at each one of our properties.
Really?
And on the porch or in the patio just to relax. And so we just went with Red Glider Getaways. And you go there and you'll see our Smokies cabins, our Gulf Shores place, or our one here in Dallas-Fort Worth.
Love it. I feel like there's a story behind the Red Glider. Is it a good story? Is it one to tell or no?
That's pretty much all I told you. That's pretty much
it?
the story.
That's it? That's the story.
And we need a name. We got Red Glider.
You're searching for like who else is called what? There's a lot of vacation companies out there. So you're trying to figure out what URL and is available and how can you pull together a logo and
he said it was about the 5th try on GoDaddy.
Yeah.
redglidergetaways.com.
You got it.
Love it.
I'm got a phone number for us?
As soon as we're done.
No, just go to redglidersgetaways.com and
automation.
You will find our phone number and email on there if you just want to get in contact with me. I'm always looking to help others. I've been like, not to promote any sort of platforms, but I've been an Airbnb ambassador now for about 2 years just to help people set up or if people just have questions about a listing. I'm always happy to, when I have the time, just to respond and get some feedback.
You know what? To attest to that, Joel, I should have said this before. My apologies for not saying this before, but the reason why you're here today is probably more because you offered to come here and to do exactly what you're doing and to be here and to help other people because you recognized what we were doing by listening to our podcast and you reached out to me and said, hey, I think my story might be helpful to you and what you're doing. And so I made it sound like I brought you here, but really there was more you taking that action to reach out to me. And that's a testament to what you're talking about.
Take action.
take action and being there to help other people. You want to inspire and help other people as well. So that's good. That's the whole reason why we do this. Right, Kyle?
Yep. And we appreciate you coming in, Joel. We really do. So if you heard him here, redglidergetaways.com. If you want to give us a call and ask us what that website was in the future, give me a call, 817-818-9039. We're happy to talk to you, get you patched through to Joel or whatever else. And we appreciate you coming in, Joel.
Is there an email?
Yeah, I guess we can tell him the email. His email is showmethemoney at wearetpm.com. And we appreciate you tuning in.
You know I like to do that, Kyle. Don't take it away.
I know. I was going to try to slip out of it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Joel. Appreciate you coming in.